Picture this, 20,000 years ago, somewhere in the frozen expanse of what we now call Siberia, a hunter kneels beside the body of someone they loved. The community is starving. Winter has claimed 3 lives already, and this hunter is about to do something that would horrify us today, but saved their people. They pick up a femur, a human thigh bone, and they start carving it into a weapon. Stop and sit with that for a second. Not a myth, not a horror movie. Real archaeology, real bones, real evidence pulled from real digs across Europe, Asia, and the Americas. We like to imagine our ancestors as primitive, simple, almost cartoonish. But what if I told you they were making brutally practical, almost clinical decisions? The same decisions modern trauma surgeons and battlefield medics still study today? Here's the raw truth. Bone was never just leftover. Human bone specifically shows up in the archaeological record as tools, weapons, and ornaments in multiple cultures, from Ice Age Europe to Neolithic sites in France, to ritual objects in parts of Papua New Guinea and pre-Columbian America. Why human bone specifically? Because it's dense, it's strong. A human femur, properly dried and worked, has a tensile strength that rivals some modern materials. Ancient toolmakers weren't sentimental about this. They were engineers with no metal, no factories, and no room for waste. Now imagine the scene fully. A small hunter-gatherer band. No hospitals, no cemeteries in the way we understand them. When someone died, or from disease, from a fall, from a fight, their body wasn't just buried and forgotten. In many cultures, it was processed, not out of cruelty, out of necessity, ritual, or belief. Some bones were turned into daggers, others into needles, awls, or arrow points. In certain Bronze Age European sites, archaeologists have found human bone points, identical in shape and wear pattern to animal bone tools used for hunting, meaning they weren't ceremonial. They were used, sharpened, reworked, broken and repaired. Here's the detail that still gives researchers chills. Cut marks on some of these bones show the same butchery technique, used on animal carcasses, not violent, chaotic marks but calm, practiced, repeated strokes. That precision tells us something disturbing and fascinating at once. This wasn't rage, this was routine. Think about what that means psychologically. These weren't monsters. They were people who had normalized something we consider unthinkable, the same way we've normalized things future generations might find equally shocking. Factory farming, for instance, or how casually we discard waste that other resource-scarce societies would never waste. And here's a question worth sitting with before we go further. If you were starving, freezing, and staring at the one material strong enough to keep your family alive, would morality win or survival? That's the doorway we're stepping through, because this isn't just a story about ancient weapons. It's a story about how survival rewires the human mind, and how the line between sacred and useful has always been thinner than we like to admit. Let's get into the evidence, because this isn't speculation. It's forensic archaeology, and the findings are wilder than fiction. One of the most famous cases comes from Gough's cave in England, dated to around 15,000 years ago. Researchers there didn't just find human bone tools, they found human skulls modified into what looked like ceremonial drinking cups, alongside bones bearing cut marks consistent with defleshing. Scientists using microscopic wear analysis confirmed these. Marks matched butchery patterns, not accidental damage from burial or animal scavenging. Here's where it gets genuinely mind-bending. Some of these bones weren't just used, they were curated, polished, carried, reused over years, sometimes generations. That tells anthropologists something profound. This wasn't random savagery. It was structured behavior, possibly tied to ritual, memory, or even a form of ancestor worship, where using a loved one's bone was an act of honoring them, not desecrating them. Now flip to a completely different continent. In parts of ancient Papua New Guinea, human bone daggers, carved primarily from the leg bones of respected elders or defeated enemies, were status symbols. Owning one meant something. Using it in combat meant even more. The bone had to come from someone with strength or status in life, because ancient peoples believed that strength didn't disappear at death and it transferred. Sit with that idea for a moment. The belief that power lives inside the material itself. That's not far from how modern athletes treat lucky equipment, or how soldiers carry sentimental objects into battle, believing they carry protection. Different century, same human wiring. Then there's the science of why bone worked so well as a weapon in the first place. Human bone, when properly dried, has remarkable flexibility combined with sharpness when fractured correctly. Similar to how modern engineers study biological composites for designing better prosthetics and even body armor. Researchers in biomechanics labs have actually tested fracture patterns of long bones to understand impact resistance, and some of that data lines up almost perfectly with ancient tool designs. Our ancestors were unknowingly doing material science millennia before the term existed. Here's the pivotal shift, though the one that separates practical necessity from cultural practice. Archaeologists studying multiple sites noticed a pattern. Societies didn't turn to human bone tools only during famine or crisis. Many kept doing it long after resources were abundant, which means this wasn't purely survival anymore. It became identity, meaning, meaning story. This is where human psychology steps in. Modern behavioral science shows humans build meaning around scarcity and death, almost instinctively. Funerals, memorial tattoos, keeping a loved one's ashes in jewelry. The human mind desperately wants death to mean something, to be useful, to continue rather than simply end. Ancient people weren't so different. Turning a person's bone into a tool or weapon wasn't always about disrespect. It was sometimes the deepest form of respect available to them, making sure someone's strength, memory, and presence didn't just vanish into the earth. And once you see that, the horror of this topic starts, looking a lot more like an early form of something, startlingly human and startlingly modern. Here's the twist that most documentaries never tell you. This isn't ancient history. It's still happening, just in different forms. Think about it. We still use human remains today, just wrapped in modern language. Bone grafts in surgery sometimes use processed human bone. Medical schools use donated skeletons as teaching tools. Some cultures still create relics, keepsakes, and even diamonds compressed from cremated remains. The impulse never disappeared. It just evolved with technology and ethics. So when people react to ancient bone weapons with pure horror, it's worth asking, are we horrified because it's foreign to human nature or because it's uncomfortably close to it? Here's a scenario to sit with. Imagine a modern survival situation. A plane crash in a remote mountain range. No food, no rescue for weeks. History has already shown us, in tragic real cases, how quickly unthinkable options become necessary. Ones when survival is on the line. Our ancestors weren't a different species making alien decisions. They were people exactly like us, just standing far closer to the edge of survival than most of us will ever stand. That's the real takeaway here. Morality is often a luxury of stability. When resources are abundant, we build strict lines around what's acceptable. When survival is uncertain, those lines shift, not because humans become evil, but because the brain reprioritizes ruthlessly towards staying alive. Modern psychology backs this up. Studies on decision-making under extreme scarcity consistently show the same pattern. Humans rationalize previously unthinkable actions astonishingly fast when survival is threatened. It's not weakness. It's wiring in the same ancient survival circuitry sitting quietly beneath our modern, comfortable lives. And here's the emotional gut punch. Some of these ancient bone weapons weren't made from strangers, enemies, or nameless bodies. Isotope analysis on certain remains suggests close kinship, meaning some tools may have been crafted from family members, not out of coldness, but potentially the opposite. A way of keeping someone close, useful, remembered, protective, even in death. That reframes everything, doesn't it? What looked like a horror story at the start of this video is really a story about love, survival, memory, and meaning, told through the only materials available at the time. So here's a question worth carrying with you after this video ends. In a world obsessed with legacy, leaving something behind, being remembered, living on through impact, we're ancient humans, in their own brutal and brilliant way, already doing exactly that, turning loved ones into protection, into strength, into survival for the people left behind. Maybe the real difference between them and us isn't what we value, just how we choose to preserve it. If this made you rethink what primitive really means, hit subscribe, because history isn't just about the past, it's a mirror, and sometimes it shows us exactly who we still are.